Hi, everyone. My name is Alexis Porter. I'm with Research Computing Services, and today we're going to focus on applying to allocations to gain access to Quest. Before you can log into Quest for the first time, you'll need to have an account. There are several options to choose from when creating an account, so let's go through these options together. Before we jump into more detail, this video is going to cover several different sections, from joining an existing allocation to general access allocations, buy-in allocations, and workshop or classroom allocations. And it's important to note that allocations on Quest are not backed up, regardless of what kind of allocation you choose. So we'll start with the first option, join an existing allocation. This is a common procedure if you're joining a lab or working on a collaborative project. To join an existing allocation, you'll need to fill out an application that you can find online using the link provided or the QR code. This form requires you to input the allocation. This typically starts with the letters B, P, or E, depending on what type of allocation it is. The allocation manager also is something you'll have to fill out, and they will need to be the one to give the initial approval to the request form. You may need to ask the person you're working with to determine who the allocation manager is. And lastly, you'll need to fill out the principal investigator. After approval from the allocation manager, the research computing team will then approve the form. The next option is general access allocations. These allow users to have free access to a subset of Quest resources through an allocation process. General access allocations can be shared between multiple researchers and are often shared between researchers on a particular project. Additionally, general access allocations give users access to the analytics nodes, as well as compute nodes and general access GPU nodes and high memory nodes. It's important to note that these types of allocations are not suitable for classwork or non-research purposes. And this is also a shared resource in which a user will not have admin privileges. To gain access, researchers must apply for an allocation. Each account is associated with a specific allocation that can be used for computational resources and storage, depending on what a user selects. And there are two types of general access allocations you can apply for. The first one that we're going to focus on is the Research 1 allocation. This allocation gives users 1 terabyte of storage in a project directory, 80 gigabytes in home, and can be used for less computationally intensive projects. And this is generally a good place to start for new researchers. To apply for a Research 1 allocation, researchers just need to fill out a request form with a single paragraph that provides justification for allocation use. The application for a Research 1 allocation is reviewed by Research Computing Services, and once approved, users will receive an email with further instructions for logging in and using your allocation. And this form is approved on a rolling basis and requires renewal annually. Typically, a statement of purpose should be a few sentences long that describe the proposed research, the amount of storage and computing needs the project's going to require, and any software that you plan to use while accessing Quest. The second option is a Research 2 allocation. This is designed to support larger projects that are more computationally intensive or require more storage than available under a Research 1 allocation. These allocations give users 2 terabytes of storage in the project directory, 80 gigabytes in home, and users will receive the highest level of general access priority available for jobs on the general access nodes. To apply for a Research 2 allocation, users must provide a research proposal. The format of the proposal is provided in the form of a downloadable template. Users with an existing Research 1 allocation can also apply for Research 2 renewal. And this template is split into 3 parts. And so you can find this template once you go to the actual application. And so we're going to go over the different parts of the template in a bit more detail, starting with introduction and significance, a summary of the projected resources, and a description of the software. So the first part involves a brief introduction of the project. You can think of this as an abstract length description of the intended research. This description should generally describe the background of the research that you're intending to use Quest for, the proposed gap or research question of interest, and then the project itself that you're going to work on in Quest. And so for a comparison of what's expected from a Research 2 allocation, we can look at the Research 1 allocation on application on the left, and you could see that Research 2 requires just a bit more information, a bit more detail in what you're planning to use these resources for. Next, researchers must fill out a description of the computational methods and resources requested. This should be a comprehensive overview of computational and storage capacities needed to justify a Research 2 allocation. So in this case scenario, this particular proposal is requiring use of 1.5 terabytes of storage for processing MRI data and then splitting this into two different components that requires 35,000 monthly CPU hours as well as 1,000 simulations. Part 2 of the Research 2 application is a summary of projected resources you anticipate running. So this is where users would provide more detail of the computing resources that are required to conduct the appropriate research questions. So it's a bit more detailed than the last example that I showed. So here it's the number of jobs that you're planning on running and how much time you believe each job is likely going to take. Additionally, researchers should describe the various storage resources needed to conduct the project at each stage of processing. So here, the initial processed files is 560 gigabytes, and each stage of processing requires a bit more storage, and that's how this particular application came to the justification of 1.7 terabytes. Part 3 of the template is optional. This is where a user can specify different software and modules that they're planning to use for their research needs. This section includes things like parallelizing code, GPU use, containers, high memory nodes, and analytics nodes. These applications are approved on a quarterly basis, and once an application is approved, users will have access to these accounts for 1 year with an option to renew annually with an updated research proposal. If you are submitting a renewal form for a Research 2 allocation, you'll need to document the progress that's been achieved through the use of this allocation. And this documentation should be materials such as manuscripts, conference presentations, and thesis projects. Once you have general access allocation, you can start using Quest. Research 1 and 2 allocations will always begin with the letter P followed by a series of numbers. When creating submission scripts on Quest, general access allocations use the short, normal, or long partitions, as well as gen GPU for general GPU use and gen high mem for high memory nodes. And each of these different partitions allow for various types of hours, which you can find more information on using the QR code below. And that wraps up general access allocations. So we're now going to focus on purchasing resources for buy-in allocations and then classroom or workshop allocations. So if your research requires a significant amount of computation or more than 2 terabytes of storage, you can also purchase your compute nodes, storage, or both on Quest. Users who have purchased resources on Quest, otherwise known as buy-ins, will have dedicated access to purchased compute nodes for a period of 5 years from the date of acquiring the allocation. This means that the scheduler reserves a subset of compute resources for a full access allocation. This allocation begins with the letter B, followed by a series of numbers. For creating a job on Quest, the partition parameter must either contain the account number, that B followed by some numbers, or the words buy-in. And some allocations have specialized partitions that users must include instead of the account name. It is important to note that some buy-in allocations are storage only, meaning you will not be able to run a job using these particular allocations. To check if a buy-in account is storage only, you can use the command check project. And you can find out more information using the QR code provided. Lastly, users can also apply for a workshop or classroom allocation. This allocation can be used to support teaching, short-term training, educational events, or coursework that requires high-performance computing capabilities or analytics nodes. Workshop and classroom allocations are reviewed and approved by Research Computing Services and require instructors to submit the request at least 1 week before the class or educational workshop begins. Instructors should describe how they're going to use the allocation for educational purposes and should attach a syllabus if relevant. The instructors will need to supply net IDs of students, instructors, and support staff who need access to the allocation. This allocation provides an account that starts with the letter E followed by a series of numbers. All students added to the allocation will be given access to the account. The group will have 2 terabytes of shared storage, and each student will have 80 gigabytes available in their individual home directories. Students can also access the Quest Analytics nodes for smaller interactive jobs. This account will expire approximately 3 weeks after the end of the quarter. If you requested shared storage space as part of the allocation, files in it will be deleted when the allocation expires. And briefly, these kinds of allocations also require partitions that are similar to the general access allocation, so things like short, normal, or long. So once you have an account set up, you can use Quest for either computing or for storage, depending on what you've selected. And that concludes this tutorial. If you have any questions, feel free to reach us at questhelp@northwestern.edu, or you can fill out a ticket using the QR code or web address provided.